So Little Cup 1v1 is a very interesting metagame, and while it's not super developed at the moment, one of the standouts since the beginning has been Hisuian Zorua. Now why is this, you might be asking? Is it because its ability Illusion? No. Illusion doesn't actually work in a 1v1 setting because you only really have one Pokemon technically when you go into the battle, so there's nothing to copy. So what does make Hisuian Zorua good? Well, it's a few things. The biggest is its access to Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam, of course, in a 1v1 setting is an amazing move, since you don't really need to bother with a recharge turn when you just knock them out and win the battle. Now, Hyper Beam alone isn't enough. In fact, I would say Zorua is the only good Hyper Beam user in the tier. There aren't many Little Cup Pokemon that get Hyper Beam. You have stuff like Dratini, Larvitar, Alolan Grimer for whatever reason gets it as well. But what makes Zorua Hisui stand out is its stats, and also the fact that it is a normal type, so it gets Stab on Hyper Beam. For its stats, it's notably extremely strong with an 85 base special attack, which is extremely high for the Little Cup tier. And it also has a very solid 70 base speed, allowing it to hit that golden speed stat of 17. And its normal typing, of course, gives Hyper Beam Stab. And its normal typing is also amazing because it's also alongside its ghost typing. The normal ghost typing is, of course, fantastic, as you only have the one weakness to dark, and you have 3 immunities, which is just fantastic. In a tier like Little Cup, there aren't many neutral one-hit KOs, but there are definitely some super effective one-hit KOs, so it's nice to only have that one weakness, unlike other normal types who might be weak to a very common type like Fighting. Now, this alone would make Zorua a very solid Pokemon, but there's even more to talk about as to why it's a top tier, and potentially even ban-worthy. So, stat dropping and stat raising moves are incredibly important in a 1v1 setting, especially in Little Cup, since the stats are so low, so you can get a lot of mileage from things. And Hisuian Zorua happens to get some of the best. Bitter Malice, of course, is the first option I want to talk about, which is Hisuian Zorua and Hisuian Zoroark's signature moves. But you don't really ever see them outside of this setting, because they're usually very frail, which is why I like running this very bulky EV spread. You still have so much power, but having the bulk to survive an attack or two is amazing. Bitter Malice, for those who don't know, is slightly weaker than Shadow Ball. It is a ghost special attack. And in exchange for 5 base power from Shadow Ball, you have a 100% chance to lower the target's attack, which is just fantastic against slower Pokemon. All of the slow, bulky attackers, stuff like Snubbull, stuff like Mudbray, they just struggle because you Bitter Malice into Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam does like 70% to even bulky targets, and Bitter Malice does enough damage to put them in the range of it because it's a very strong move coming off of Hisuian Zorua. And with the attack drop, they cannot really even KO you with stuff like Bulldoze and the Earthquake from Mudbray, for instance. At least if you have the bulk investment. The bulk investment also just goes a long way because it's not the bulkiest Pokemon naturally. 35-40 is pretty dang low. But with investment and with Eviolite and with Bitter Malice, you're able to survive those hits. Another big option, in my opinion, is Icy Wind. That's why I actually don't have much speed, though I have a little bit, and the reason for my little bit of speed is it allows you to outspeed Pokemon that hit 19 and 20 speed, stuff like Hisuian Voltorb, stuff like Weasel, Apom, after just Icy Wind. Icy Wind is incredibly useful against those faster but somewhat frailer Pokemon. They can still often just tank a Hyper Beam, but with Icy Wind, you get them in range of Hyper Beam. Gligar is another amazing target I forgot to mention. Gligar is faster than Hisuian Zorua, but Icy Wind both allows it to outspeed and also just 2-shots Gligar. It's amazing. And the last slot is usually preserved for Calm Mind or Snarl. Calm Mind is generally the better option, but Snarl has its uses, which I'll get to. So Calm Mind, giving both the special attack and special defense boost is just amazing. +1 Hyper Beam is going to KO a lot of things. And the special defense boost allows you to just tank some really strong special attacks. It's great. Snarl, however, as we were getting into the other options, Snarl is great because, 1, it's a sound move, so it hits through Substitute. A lot of faster Pokemon might try to use Substitute to cheese you, because they might try to use Substitute to dodge Hyper Beam, and then with Hyper Beam you have to recharge, so they get a free turn to attack. Technically 2 because they're faster. However, Snarl can just go through subs. The biggest thing though with Snarl is actually for the mirror matchup, because opposing Zorua are immune to both Hyper Beam and Bitter Malice, and then of course Icy Wind isn't doing that much damage. So having access to a super effective Snarl that also lowers their special attack is just great. Those are the main options I would run, but Zorua actually does have a fairly large move pool. There's stuff to consider, stuff like Burning Jealousy, which helps against steel types, stuff like Sandshrew, Alolan Sandshrew, maybe Poniard as well. You have Terra Blast, which is just a strong normal attack that you don't have to recharge. Unfortunately, Zorua doesn't get Hyper Voice. That's something only Zoroark gets, but Terra Blast is still okay in that role of trying to get an attack into Hyper Beam against something that might resist Bitter Malice. Comeuppance is a very cool move that was introduced in Generation 9 that you never really see. It's basically Metal Burst, but Dark type, and Zorua gets it. And just keep in mind if you're running this that it doesn't have negative priority like Counter and Mirror Coat does, so you're going to run it on a slower EV spread, something like what I had earlier, and just don't click it against very slow Pokemon. You also have Taunt, which is great for Pokemon like Shroodle and Cottony, which just need one turn to survive, and then they just spam status moves until you go down. Taunt just shuts that down completely. And then Substitute is great for Sucker Punch mind games against stuff like Stunky and Scorbunny. There's even more stuff I didn't mention. Stuff like Will-O-Wisp, Shadow Sneak, Nasty Plot, Sludge Bomb, Trick. Zorua has a large move pool, so feel free to mess around with that. I personally think that Zorua, in its current state within the tier, should be banned. There are also a bunch of other Pokemon that should be banned that aren't as interesting, so I'm not talking about them here. Stuff like Gligar, stuff like Scraggy. But I think Zorua's just nuke of an attack of Hyper Beam alongside all of the traits that I've talked about, it's a bit too much for the tier. However, I do want to talk about Zorua's counters while we're here, because there are some. It's not many, but there are some. Now, of course, the biggest thing is Dark types. Dark types naturally are going to do very well into the Pokemon that's weak to Dark, though they still have to be very careful of Hyper Beam, because unless they resist it. Scraggy, of course, is a really, really strong Pokemon at the moment. Poniard is great because it resists Hyper Beam and Bitter Malice. It even has Defiant if it tries to Bitter Malice you, or Icy Wind you. You might struggle against some variants with fire moves, whether it be Burning Jealousy or Will-O-Wisp, but keep that in mind. Volibee can be very bulky. In fact, I would probably maybe even run a different EV spread with more special defense. And you can just Nasty Plot, you can click Dark moves. This honestly just isn't the best set for this, but it's a generally solid set. You got Grimer, Alolan Grimer specifically, which is just very bulky. You have Stab Knockoff, Poison Touch. And I want to mention Stunky here as well. Stunky's a very solid Little Cup Pokemon, but I'm not sure how good it is in 1v1, mostly just because this should probably be Jolly. Oops. Mostly just because it has the issue of almost 50-50ing Zorua. Now, keep in mind that a lot of Zoruas run 4 attacks. And also it'd have to win every mind game with Sucker Punch. But Icy Wind into Hyper Beam does just knock you out. And Knockoff alone does not KO, so you have to knock off into Sucker Punch if they click Icy Wind, so just keep that in mind. You also have Honorable Dark type with Sucker Punch Scorbunny, because of course the Libero ability. Very similar to Stunky, where you kind of have that mind game, just keep that in mind. Now I have the 2 Prankster Pokemon I mentioned before, Shroodle and Cottony. Shroodle can just click Dig into Copycat Spam, and it will always be underground when Zorua tries to attack. And then Cottony can click Leech Seed, and then just click Substitute and Protect until Zorua goes down. Both of these Pokemon can Lucid Taunt, but it is still a very solid answers. And then you also have some stuff like Sandshrew. Alolan Sandshrew can, with a lot of special defense investment, can tank non-Burning Jealousy attacks, and it can click like Sword Stance into Triple Axle into Ice Shard. It's very strong physical attack. And then you also have some especially bulky stuff like Flabebe, who can use Calm Mind plus Synthesis to be able to tank any of its hits, and then boost up with Calm Mind and use Alluring Voice. But yeah, there's not that many Hisuian Zorua counters, as you can see, which is kind of why I think it should be banned alongside other stuff. As I said before, the metagame is still fairly new. Well, not new, but unexplored. So there's a lot of bans, there's a lot of exploration that's needed. By the time this comes out, it might even already be banned. Who knows? I just wanted to talk about Hisuian Zorua because I think it's very cool, since it doesn't even use its ability at all, and yet it's a top tier. So, yeah, thanks for watching. As for future videos, I'm going to put something in a pinned comment just talking about it. Because, you know, they'll happen when they happen is basically my thoughts. Yeah, thanks for watching. Have a good one.